So I was trying to figure out what to talk about today on today's video. And what's been interesting, this is probably about the third or fourth attempt. Something keeps happening, either something's going on or I notice something. And what I found is I've had to start and stop the video several times. And what I found is every time I've had to start or stop, I've just realized, okay, I've made a mistake somewhere. I need to do something here or I need to do something there. And I had this beautiful conversation with a woman earlier on who had a conversation with me back in 2008 when I did my first ever interview. We were talking about this whole idea of trusting and this whole idea of doership or non-doership as she was talking about. And it really made me think, and I thought to myself, I'd like to, I've previously done videos on trusting, but I don't feel that any one video is ever going to encapsulate that. And as I think as we move through life and as our story changes, our trust in what is this reality deepens, and it offers more insight, there's more nuances, there's more subtleties that occur in this deepening of this trusting what actually is. What you find is as you trust more and more what you are, the idea of your own personal doership starts to die there. So you find that you don't as readily identify with your story, you don't as readily identify with your thoughts, your feelings or emotions. And there is really, in a sense, a deepening of this trusting, a deepening of this silence. And you find yourself quite possibly saying less than you used to, and probably talking so much more clearly, if obviously talking is occurring like it is in this video, talking much more clearly about the topic, because the need to embellish, the need to glamorize and dramatize just tends to die. And that trusting of what is shows us how little of our stories are really valid. And this concept of not trying or not doing becomes more valid in your life. You realize that there is really no trying or doing here or worrying about what needs to be said or what needs to be done. Life takes care in the truest sense of the word. However, having said that, it doesn't mean that from time to time we can't engage in the story and we don't get engaged in the story. And we don't feel those thoughts, feelings and emotions. Sometimes they do come up and they demand our attention. And I think when that happens, there does tend to be a bit of a, oh my God, why is this happening? And I feel the reason that that's happening is just to offer us a deeper understanding of where we are, in order for us to deepen our experience of what we truly are. And this stripping away, in this deepening, what we find is what we're not just leaves us. I was listening to a really beautiful podcast a couple of days ago between two non-dual speakers, and the term post-enlightenment sadhana, which I believe is credited to Francis Lucille, was introduced. And I feel that sometimes what can happen is that if we've had this full-blown awakening, but sometimes certain work hasn't been done, I think after enlightenment what you find is life continues to strip away, continues to simplify, and continues to deepen our appreciation and understanding of what this life is. And we're always traveling. I don't feel that there's this pinnacle of understanding and then that's it. I feel we're constantly traveling, we're constantly revealing ourselves. I was having a beautiful conversation the other day where the other person said that they weren't seeking anymore. And I agreed, because what I found is since the initial idea of seeking dying, there's more of a seeing. But in that seeing, and I feel that's where the journey really starts. There's a deepening. There's a deepening of our trust. Our letting go of our story to the point where we realize we're not doing any of this. It really is impersonal, and yet the idea of the personal can appear, and it sometimes appears in order to help us just deepen our understanding of something that we may be not quite correct on at this moment in time. And in that sense, this realization is constantly happening and it's constantly deepening. And we realize that there really hasn't been an idea of seeking, but there's always been this seeing of what is. And depending on where we are in our lives or where we are on our journeys, this seeing occurs as and how, to quote the Quran, everything at the appointed hour. So I feel understanding happens at the appointed time, and sometimes we do need the story to illustrate something, to scare us, to bring fear, to bring joy, for us to experience that gratitude and find ourselves humble before this thing called life. And the more we are humbled in front of this thing called life, the more we are grateful, the more there is humility, the more there is joy, the more there is bliss. The less and less we see of us and the more and more we see of life. And we realize that there really is no one doing this story. There really isn't anybody living this apparent illusion. It's something that is literally just happening. But in a way where it's very empowering, whereby if the story needs to return to illustrate something, then that's absolutely fine. If anything, humanity increases here. And we have a deeper appreciation for life. We have a deeper appreciation for what is. And I found certainly that from the early days when I was coming out with expansive non-dual concepts, that there has been this return to life where the real humanity and the real day-to-day existence of life is seen as where the answer actually is. And yet, simultaneously, it is lived and it's not lived as well. It is done and it is, it is done and it's being done as well. Sorry, we're doing and it's being done as well. And this place in the middle, this paradoxical place is where the resolution occurs. But that resolution isn't something that we can ever speak of, because there really are no words. It's just something that can be lived, it can be experienced, whatever words you want to use, because as I was saying earlier to a friend, it's beautiful how any communication about this just collapses. That there really are no words, that anything that's ever going to be said about this topic will always fall short. Anything that we speak about in terms of non-doership or resisting what is or loving what is or the personal, the impersonal will always just collapse. And in this collapsing, we're born anew. And there's life in this collapsing, although obviously it sounds so contradictory. So you're saying it's collapsing, but there's great life and understanding in this collapsing. And that's where we have to, in a sense, just trust and take that leap of faith, so to speak, that everything is actually going to be okay. However, and this is where the beauty of this is, we can have that experience, that fully human experience of being confused and seeking for clarity, or being afraid, or feeling fear, because sometimes even by accepting and feeling those emotions fully, we find ourselves in a place of now. So as I say, this really is that gift that keeps on giving. And this is what I found recently, like I said, I mean, the way I'm speaking is changing. There seems to be this new demographic appearing in my life, which isn't very dissimilar to the demographic there was before. And it's creating a different kind of conversation. I've done a few live meetings. There are talks, obviously, for a few other things that are in the pipeline, which no doubt I'll announce as and how. And I have found myself at times quite overwhelmed by it all, quite freaked out, I suppose, quite fearful as to how will I do this, or how will I know this. But in accepting life and in letting go of the idea of trying to do something, and sitting more and more with this idea of trusting life and realizing that it has nothing to do with you. I remember, God, about 2 years ago, I did a talk outside Watkins. Sorry, I did a talk at Watkins bookshop, and I was stood outside with a dear friend, and I'm having a complete meltdown. I'm thinking, God, you're going to speak in Watkins, and this is where like the bigger speakers come, and it's like the rarefied air of spirituality. And there was a very real feeling of fear. There was panic. There was a, God, I don't really want to be here. I want to be anywhere but here. And then about 45 minutes later, I'm walking out of this bookshop thinking, what was the fuss all about? Because it doesn't matter what we're feeling. It doesn't matter whether we think we can or can't. There is our plan, and then there's life's plan. And life, to echo something in the Quran says, they plan, and Allah plans, and Allah is the best of planners. And we can see that life's plan is always so much better for us if only we would but trust. And the beautiful thing about that trusting is we don't have to go to the mountaintop and make these great statements of trusting. Trust can be something that comes into place with every understanding, every moment, every setback, every victory. And we find ourselves more and more in what is and less in what isn't. And the linguistical dramas, the understanding, the need to know just simplifies and just dies. And it can be as simple as a man talking into a camera. So if we trust, what we find is that trust deepens, and it also allows us to see and experience more and more this non-doership in our life. That if we, and this is such a cliched saying, it's something that everybody has heard, if we let go and let God, then we will really over time experience more and more this non-doership, and we will experience more and more deepening and trusting of that non-doership, to the point where the idea of a story, the idea of thoughts or feelings or emotions become quite invalid and stop having the effect upon us that they have to. But the beauty of it is that they can return as and how to provide understanding, and that understanding again deepens, and it deepens more and more into what we truly are.